Do you need encouragement to turn tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Perdue.
Hey, come on in. It's time for us to get some inspiration, motivation, some key. Let me fix that right here. There we go. So we can get you a little couple of golden nuggets that you can use to help you get through your next trials and tribulations. And again, pay it forward. Don't take it to the grave with you. It's not that valuable. Pass it on to help someone else. Once you're dead and gone, you're not going to need it anyway. So don't hold on to it. Pass it on. All right, today our podcast, we're going to be talking with Bernice McDonald. And I just want to start off right here. She said when she sent the information to me, first thing she says, all I can say is, wow, James, you are a living, breathing example of perseverance. Whoa, we're done with the podcast. We got all the stuff we need to know right there. I'm a great example of perseverance, an example of we're done, everybody. No, I'm kidding. We're going to have fun. Bernice, come on in here. And while she's jumping in, her mission is to help women. Now, when she says women, I say, men, listen up and learn something to help these women as well. All right. She's on a mission to help women to know that they are brave enough to do hard things, no matter what it is. All right. Bernice, author of, let's put your book up here, author of Brave Enough to Be Myself. Okay. And this is Bernice McDonald. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. James. I really appreciate you having me on the show and for that amazing introduction, because really you are such an example of perseverance. I don't think we need any other stories. I agree with you.
All right, we're done. Podcast is over. You heard it from her. Oh, no, we're kidding again. All right, because I want to get her story up here. I mean, that's the reason we got this podcast started, is to get other people's story. For me to shut up, y'all tired of hearing mine. Okay, so we're going to, Bernice, again, thank you for being here. Appreciate the compliments and everything that you got towards me in the show. But yeah, we want to find out, women are brave enough, should be brave enough, should know they're brave enough to handle the hard stuff in life, come in life. And I'm a very big believer. My mom, basically a single mother, raised me and two brothers. And I believe you when you say women are brave enough, especially the single mothers. But yeah, women's they're tough. So all right, go ahead, Bernice, get us started here.
Well, you know what, James? I think there are many brave human beings on this planet, right? And both women and men. And I talk to women, but really, just like you said in the beginning, this is something that's human. It's something about all of us. It was kind of strange because I became a coach about 20 years ago, worked at a different job, was always a coach on the side because it's tough getting going. And during that time, I was trying to figure out what my niche was. And I always ended up coming back to working with women. But about a year and a half ago, it seemed as if everything was pointing to a message that I needed to give. And that message was all around courage. And probably because I consider myself to have been one of the most scared women alive that walk this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess when I look at life and I look at where, I think about life, I came to the conclusion that really it's like a path, right? And we are all walking it. When you're born, you have no idea how it's going to turn out, and we walk it until the moment we die. And so in between those two places, there's all these things that happen. I kind of came down to the conclusion that there's like bombs that go off and, absolutely turn our lives upside down. There's boulders that drop on us, sometimes flattening us for a period of time. We have no idea how we're going to get out from under them. And then that's not to mention the rocks that get thrown at us from other people, like judgment and criticism and all those things that can absolutely devastate us. Well, at those things, walking through those things adds up to one thing happening to all of us. I don't care who we are. And you have had some amazing stories on your show. I was listening to some of your previous podcast stories. Incredible people who have faced amazing bombs and boulders and rocks, that have been thrown at them. And what it produces in most of us is this thing we call fear. And fear gets in the way of all of us. And we often find as we grow up, say, for example, when I was in grade 4, I had a teacher who was mean. Oh, she was mean. And I was this little quiet girl who didn't have very much confidence. And I remember her calling me to the back of the room one day, and everybody else just had their head down at their desk because they didn't want her to notice them, right? And I went trembling to her desk, which was at the back of the room, and she wanted to go over some math with me. And I was no dummy. I knew what to do, but she said, pointing at her book, "What's the answer to that? You know the answer to that." And I was just kind of like frozen. And I remember she reached out and slapped my arm and said, "You know the answer. Come on, spit it out." And it's just like that was one of the first times. And those were in the days when teachers could get away with that kind of thing, right?
That was what they call back in the day, huh?
Yes, exactly. But what did that moment mean to me? In that moment, I started to believe that I wasn't very smart, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
here was a teacher who was overpowering me, somebody telling me that I was, implying that I wasn't very bright. I carried that with me for many years, that, the fear almost of speaking up in class or saying anything for fear I might get it wrong. It's those moments as we walk our path in life that start to train us and implant those beliefs in us that we aren't enough. And I really think that the key, because it was for me as I went on through life, I went through an eating disorder. I went through a divorce after a 24-year marriage. There were many things that happened to me, and the meaning I gave them was creating this very fearful person, that I wasn't enough and that there must be something wrong with me because I never could get ahead and life treated me like this and this had happened to me. And, I mean, so you and many of the people that you've interviewed, they all talk about those stories of their lives that, it starts to make you question. And so it was when I actually had found the courage, because I believe that's the antidote, for us to find the courage within ourselves. I think that that's what we need to seek in life, because when we find the courage to take small steps forward, not the big leaps, because, the big leaps scare us even more. It's
Mm-hmm.
those tiny, brave steps that we take that actually move us forward little by little by little. And that didn't happen until I took I guess it was a pretty big step, but that had led up to it, until I actually separated from my husband. And in that period of time, I was already 50 by then. So in that period of time, sorry, my mistake. I was just under 40. I was about 48. Between there and my second marriage, I grew so much. I think I did all of my growing up in that time because that was such a tough time.
Mm-hmm.
I refused to let it get me down, even though there were some really dark moments then. But during that time, learned that you don't have to have it perfect. You don't have to do it all right. You just have to learn to be brave enough to
Hmm.
actually take those little tiny brave steps
That's right.
forward.
Well, I wanted to ask, back in school with that teacher, that with you were, was it more that you were insecure? Okay. Was that from being shy? Mom and dad bring you up to be insecure? Were they, harsher on you than what may be the normal? Uh, I mean, how do you think all that started?
Oh, that's a great question
All
because
right, we're done. That's a great question. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. All right, but yeah, go ahead. I was just thinking,
insightful
a lot
question.
of people that start off with that insecurity,
Yeah,
like you said at that time, it came from somewhere.
it did.
And
It
so
did.
I'm just wondering, how did it
Yeah.
evolve?
And I was raised in a very busy house, 700 square foot house with 5 kids and 2 adults. And I was second oldest, and I didn't demand attention. I don't think my siblings would probably tell me differently, but I was pretty quiet, and I've always been observant. And I think I got lost in the shuffle. And
Hmm.
so I was quite a quiet little girl. And I think I discovered that the safest place to be was out of trouble.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I can
I was,
see, I can understand that.
yeah,
What number child?
a second.
Second.
Yeah,
Now that's surprising because I would think that you'd want more of the attention than the younger ones, you know,
yeah,
to be, so to start at number two,
yeah,
child, and again setting back and let three, four, and five get more of attention, whether it's trouble, good in sports, whatever it was. But
yeah.
your thinking was, as long as I'm not in trouble, we're in good shape,
Yes,
and wasn't thinking about,
yeah,
let me go be a basketball player or write
yeah,
a good poetry to get that accolade. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I really, like, all the way through my school journey, because a couple of times we were in classes with teachers that were not very good teachers and they couldn't keep control of the class.
Oh
And I
yeah.
ended up, kind of being like, I was pretty outgoing, even though I was quieter. I would end up, kind of getting in with some kids that maybe were fooling around a little bit too much. But as soon as that teacher said, all right, if I don't get some respect here or some quiet, you're all going to the principal. you know, that immediately was enough to put me back
Mm.
in line, because I hated being in trouble. I associated, and looking back, I associated being in trouble with being bad. You know,
Yeah.
I was a I was a bad person, and I was always trying to be good. That was which affected me all the way up. Um, I believe even with my marriage, it was one of the reasons why I didn't marry a guy. I wasn't wise about who I chose as a partner. Let me put it that way. And I just wanted to be chosen. I wanted to be
Yeah.
picked. You know.
It did also lead into being a pleaser,
Yes. Yeah.
because you didn't want that
Yeah.
yelling, screaming, negative stuff coming towards you. So let me just please them the best I can to
Exactly.
stay out of the trouble.
Yeah. And then and plus I was raised in a pretty like a Christian home, pretty
Hmm.
religious. That was at the time when there were a lot of rules to follow. And, there again, everything was about whether or not you fit into the mold. Were you, in line with what all the good people were doing? And
Yeah, yeah,
so, that contributed a lot to the person that I was becoming. And even the whole thing about well, and this is what led to my eating disorder, actually, was when I was 15 years old. A guy finally asked me out. Yeah, I'm sure teenagers are the same today. I have a granddaughter who's 16. She's into the romance and
oh
wants
yeah,
to have a boyfriend, still happens these days. But but back then, the first guy that asked me out, he was 2 years older than me. I was in awe, but I remember watching him and, being really careful about everything I did so that, he wouldn't reject me and he would like me. And, but when he broke up with me, what he said to me was, I think you have really nice hair, but, I've been thinking, you'd be really pretty if you lost 10 pounds.
Okay.
And
I get you.
that was
Started
like,
the controlling.
so, and that moment told me something again, just like that teacher had when she slapped my arm and told me, because I couldn't get my math, that boy was telling me, you're not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
I reject you because you're too fat. And I really wasn't too fat.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no. I get you. It
who
just,
cares?
he's controlling, and of
Yeah.
course you're already in that insecure stage,
Yeah.
and so now you're going, what do I do? Do I
Yeah.
lose to 10 to try to keep him? And then you're thinking, what's next?
Yeah.
Didn't like my hair color,
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that is what happened in my marriage too, and in between there. I think the long story short here is that I did not know who I was. I wasn't able to be myself at all because I let everybody else tell me who I was.
To find you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. I understand it. So
Yeah.
do you think, and I taught school for 12, 15 years and seventh graders. And
Wow.
that's the
That's a tough.
time, yeah, that's the time when the girls are blossoming and the boys are just horny as every day. And they're, and, but, and kids, they, again, like you said, both sides are wanting that love connection, going on. So,
Yeah.
but do you think males and females are more of the insecure compared to, now, don't get me wrong. I know there's guys that they're insecure from the
Yes.
way they're brought up as well.
Yeah.
But do you think it's more in the majority of the girls versus those females? Or you think
Yeah.
maybe it's about even and the guys just cover it up good?
I don't think it matters male or female. I think I learned a lot when I was looking at dating again, and
Mm-hmm.
and in between my marriages, I learned a lot about the difference between men and women and how
Yeah.
they see life. And I think I really think it's the way you're raised and the environment you're raised in, how much confidence you have. If you have with men, I think if they don't get that approval from their father figure in their life and get sort of launched into being a man and being told, yeah, you are a great guy, slap on the back and you have a lot to offer. You go
Mm-hmm.
for it, boy. And that comes a lot through sports, or I mean, that's why guys get into gangs and all of that, and girls do too. But and for girls, I think it's more about like we're naturally drawn into relationship. We
Mm-hmm.
want to, we have that romantic side to us, whereas we feel like more validated if a guy falls in love with us, right?
Yep.
And picks it. But I, you know, I think the insecurities are almost the same, but just they show themselves in different ways. It's the
Yeah.
human condition. We're all looking for that, looking to answer that primary question, who am I? And am I worth
Uh-huh.
attention? Am I worth love? Am I worth getting that pat on the back? And it's just a natural thing built into us that
Yeah.
we all experience.
Yeah. And like I said, with the guys, I don't know about the females much, but the girls,
Yeah.
um, they're they may try to hide their insecurity through sports, like you said.
Yes.
I'm good at this, and so I'll just try to shut up and not draw attention to. I was pretty much like that in school. I
Hmm.
played baseball, was good at it, but when I was in class, just teacher don't call me for a question, don't ask me to read out loud, you know, and I'll just sit there. I had that insecurity in the school system.
Hmm.
Outside school, I was all right because
Really?
again, Well, because the people I hung around with,
Right.
you know,
And they thought,
we got our own little niche group,
yes, yeah,
and we all accepted of each other, and
yeah,
we all know how goofy we are and stuff. And so only time we played on each other if we got mad about something, and then we throw it back in the face. Other than that, we're
yeah,
in our little group,
yeah.
so we're all about equal.
So that's interesting because then, like you said, when you were in a classroom answering a question, or you wanted to just be quiet, was that because you weren't in that setting with your friends then?
I didn't take no, because back, as back, we're both old enough. Back in our day,
Yeah.
you're pretty much with the same kids all through your,
Yes.
less people move in and out, but you're
Yeah.
pretty much with the same group. Where today, everybody's all over the place and all these
Yeah.
different, especially high school, middle school, you got your higher learning kids and your lower learning
Yeah.
and separated. And so, no, back when we were in, you pretty much had, so it wasn't that. I think I didn't take school. And it's sad. I got a doctorate degree, but I didn't take school serious enough.
Mm,
My thing was, and the teacher would tell me you're smarter than what your grade is.
mm,
But all I needed was a C average to play sports. That's it.
right.
And so why should I put more effort if it's all I need? And so now it wasn't the guys because we're already there.
Yeah.
So it was just so with then C average, whatever.
Yeah.
If I wasn't prepared for class, don't ask me anything because I don't want to look like an idiot in front of somebody.
Yeah.
The rest of the class.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's that. I want to look like I'm enough. Don't call me
Yeah.
out because then it's like that spotlight on you saying, "Oh, this guy doesn't know his stuff or he didn't prepare." Even though, it doesn't matter what situation. Tony Robbins has a quote that I have really started to open my eyes about this, about that whole enough feeling in
Mm-hmm.
mankind. And he said, it doesn't matter, every human being with skin on on the planet of the earth
Uh-huh.
has this fear that they're not enough, because if they're not enough, the second greatest fear is they won't be loved. So,
Yeah.
and loved, you can translate that to popular or accepted or praised or, anything like that. Like
Yeah.
what, like don't show my weaknesses. Don't make me look stupid or inadequate, because then that means I'm not loved, I'm not accepted, I'm not a material. I
Yeah.
am a
Yeah. Yeah. It just makes me go back and think, don't bring out the kryptonite against me because then
yes.
I don't look as good,
Yeah.
by myself without, I look bad to everybody else with the kryptonite beside. And I wasn't a good reader. I read a
Mm,
little slower than everybody else. And I remember in school, they every now and again the teacher would have us read a paragraph, then the next person behind them read a paragraph, next
yeah.
person behind. And I remember counting which paragraph I'm going to read. And before you get to me, I've read that paragraph 15 times to make
Oh,
sure
wow.
I didn't, or I'd look for a word that I couldn't pronounce and try
Yeah.
to figure out a way to skip past it real fast or something.
Yes.
So I did because I didn't want my peers
Yeah.
thinking less of me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. And that's that spotlight on you, right? I know exactly what you mean, because I was a slow reader too. And my comprehension then, because I was nervous about it, was less. And I had to be in grade 6. I remember they had this machine that would go, like, it would highlight the words and it would flash across the top. And there were just like 3 or 4 of us that had to sit and use this machine to help us get to be faster learners. And everybody else got to do something else during that time. That
Yeah.
was hard, because
Yeah.
again, it kind of highlighted the fact that you're behind. You're not quite
Yeah.
as
I
good as,
forgot what grade. It was 4th or 5th grade. Now I've been 3rd or 4th grade, probably 4th grade. Now that I say 4th, that for some reason there was 2 of us pulled out of the classroom to go into this other for one teacher to work with us about
yeah,
something.
yeah,
And, so here we are embarrassed that we're having to leave while everybody else is doing their thing. And
Yeah.
then we're in there 20 minutes or whatever, and have to walk back in and
Yeah.
find out where everybody is at so we can catch up where we're at. And I remember that was devastating
It's
for
very
that.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did
So
you see that looking forward? I'm just curious then. Did that affect you in the future? Like have you ever had something happen and then go back to moments like that and said, "Oh, that's probably, that was probably building in me because those things happened."
I remember one time, again, isn't it a shame I got a doctoral degree, but I failed a half a year my sophomore year of English, half a year. So
Wow.
my senior year,
Yeah.
they tell me you got to make up that half year you failed. I go, really? I thought I just no. So here I am, my senior year, taking my senior English,
Oh.
and I'm in class with these sophomores
Oh no.
as a senior. But there's another girl that was in my 12th year class. She was in that class with
Oh,
me.
thank
So
goodness.
we, talked. Plus, my girlfriend was in that class that year. So I really didn't mind it as much then. But
No.
again, here I'm a senior.
Yeah.
Don't ask me a question because
Yeah.
now all these sophomores are looking at me and I don't want to look like an idiot in front of them.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that would have been tough.
yeah.
And so much pressure on you, like we put so much pressure on ourselves when we have this invisible standard we're reaching for in our minds. And sometimes it's not invisible. Sometimes we look at the smartest person in the room, or, later on when we get into business, we look at the person that's doing the best and we measure ourselves by them. I mean, that's the whole comparison thing, right?
Yeah.
So
And
heaven
we
forbid.
shouldn't do that, but we do.
Right. I know. Because it just keeps us from learning, like it keeps us from knowing that the learning and growing is a process. And we often do it by falling on our faces, and picking
Yeah.
ourselves back up,
That's right.
and perseverance, right?
All right. You said perseverance again. Hold on. Let me give you a fist bump.
Yeah.
All right. So, a quick little funny story. The teacher, her name was Miss Bacon. And back when I was in school, they come out with that new bacon called Sizzling or something. So I
Oh,
called her Miss Sizzling. And so she was my sophomore year teacher that I failed half a year. So my senior year, I knew some of the other teachers I didn't want to take because they were teaching the higher standard English. So she was on the list for mine. And I go, all right. And I remember she said to me, she said, James, you sure you want to take me? You remember what happened in your sophomore year? You still want to graduate? And I go, you're easy. I'm going to pass. And she challenged me like she should
oh,
have.
yes.
And I passed my senior English with her. Of
Wow.
course, I ended up passing the sophomore English finally, to graduate on time. But I loved her.
Oh,
When I got my neck broke, was in the hospital. Of all my teachers in high school, she came to see me one day because she thought that much of me as a student, and she came to
wow.
visit me at the hospital, and everything. And that, again, then Judy Bacon, Judy, if you're listening, we're talking about you. And
Yeah.
so I remember 30, 35 years later, I was going through the town where she was living and
Yeah.
hadn't seen or heard from her. And I've
Yeah.
always thought about her because she came to the hospital to see me.
Wow.
And so I stopped in at the town went into the bank and said, can I borrow y'all's phone book I'm trying to look for? And I told them who. And they said, I don't think she lives here. I think she's moved into another town.
Oh,
Then I explained how she come and saw me at the hospital when I got
yeah.
paralyzed. Well, she wasn't in the phone book. And so I was leaving. Another woman comes out and says, I heard what you were talking about in there. Her daughter works up the street here at the CVS.
Oh,
It
perfect.
says, if you want me to, I'll give her your name and phone number. Then if she wants to contact you, she will.
Oh,
So she went and got the phone number to her daughter, and she calls Miss Bacon. She says, one of your former students stopped over here to see you. And she
Oh,
told me this story and wanted to
oh,
find out how they, when they called and told her and
yeah.
said, and wanted to see you. She says, I'll give you three guesses to guess who it was. And she says, James Purdue.
Oh, she knew.
She
Wow.
said,
After
James
all that
Purdue. And they
time.
said, what? You didn't need the other two guys. And so we got together and I thanked her for coming to hospital. I gave her a copy of my book and I said, you failed me in my sophomore English, but look, I published a book. And no,
Yay.
I tell people, you failed me. No, no, no. I failed myself.
Yeah.
She did the right thing.
Yes.
Okay. But I gave
Yes.
her a copy of the book and everything
Wow.
and thanked her for coming and visit me. Of all them teachers, she was the only one who came.
Wow, what a beautiful
So
story. And,
yeah,
and such evidence of how we can build into somebody else's life, right? Like
yeah,
one moment, one little visit to the hospital, I mean, that was an important time, very meaningful. But the fact that she went out of her way and actually took the time to come and see you, and then also what she had built before that, helping, because she must have really touched your heart somehow, or given you the encouragement you needed when we were so vulnerable,
she
because
did.
high school is such a vulnerable time,
Yeah,
right?
she
That's
did. And
amazing.
again, for me, for 30 years, because I knew she left the school I went to and went to the other school in
Yeah,
the town I was looking for her. I knew that. But
yeah.
here, 30, 35 years later, I finally went through that town and said, if I don't stop now, I'll never come back and try to
Wow,
find her.
that's
And
amazing.
worked out the way it's supposed to. But
Yeah.
but how amazing when she said when that woman called her, said one of your former students come looking for you. I give you three guesses, and she says James Purdue. Just knew it. So it's one of them things. What's the old thing? It's a God wink.
Yeah,
It was all meant to be through there.
exactly.
So yeah,
That's incredible. And such an also, just even in talking about fear and that sort of thing. I mean, for a teacher to to have that much interest in a student, even to be able to help them through, like, it's those people in our lives, and we all have them at certain times. They come into our life and they give us that encouragement. They give us the courage, they help us to believe in ourselves a little bit more. If we're watching for those people, we can learn so much from them and just receive so much from them, which is incredibly important.
yeah. So all right, Bernice, this has been awesome. You made me go back and reminisce. This has been a good thing.
And so
So
you should. We need
and
to look
so
back on our path.
now let's go back quickly here. So how did you end up breaking your habit of the low self-esteem and decide to I know you said you tried to do things different on the second marriage on the
Yeah,
hunt and stuff. So
yeah,
what I mean the divorce finally said I deserve better and I know what I don't want now and I know how not to act, how
yeah,
not to perceive.
yeah. That's really perceptive, because when I think of it, I was already putting those steps into place, because in the last few years of my marriage, I did a lot of counseling and I did a lot of talking about who I thought I was in the marriage. And that was counteracted by counselors who said to me, you're doing everything you can. You're being the person you are. And I think because of that, I started to realize that the me that lives inside here, the heart here, is not a write-off. That's a person who's struggling to grow and to
Hmm.
walk this life the best way she can. And so in the course of that, for a lot of reasons, I decided to leave that marriage, and that was a really big brave step for me. Coming out of that marriage too, what I did realize that I wanted to experience love, real love, in a way that I never had, for once in my life. That's all I said. And I said to God, okay, there have to be there has to be a knight in shining armor out there somewhere. So,
Uh-huh.
send him to me, because I really do want to experience love once in my life. But, that was a really interesting thing to do, because as I was pursuing that goal, I realized I needed to become different in order to live in a marriage with a knight in shining armor. I had to change myself. And so I started to look at fear, and I started to look at myself differently. And the one awesome thing that came out of that very difficult period of time was the fact, because dating was scary, and I was following this coach, and I bought her book. And she said in that book, she said, you're going to be scared. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to look that fear right in the eye, and I want you to think of it as shrink it down to this little manageable person or whatever you see it as. And then I want you to say to it, thank you for warning me about this. I appreciate your concern, but I want you to go over there in the corner and eat a cookie.
There you go.
Then you take control, and you be the boss of that fear, and you decide what you're going to do in every situation. And when I began to practice that, because I took that all in,
Yeah.
I would go on a date, and suddenly it was like, she also said, don't be so tied to the outcome. Stop trying to control how things go. Just open up your hands and be surprised at what happens. And so that's how I started to approach a lot of the situations I found myself in where I felt fear. It was like, I'm just bringing myself to the table. I'm just going to have a conversation, and I am just going to be surprised for how this turns out. And so, I developed that more and more. And funnily enough, I finally, when I was ready, because I know that was the point that came, this man offered to help me when my car wouldn't start in the parking lot. And he became my knight in shining armor, and I married him. So,
there you go.
There it was like God had a sense of humor. It's like, okay, here's your knight in shining armor. He's rescuing you.
Let me break your car down first, so that way he'll come. So
Exactly.
you'll
But,
appreciate his work.
Yes. And when I say I'm ready, it was like I was at the place where I was okay for that not to happen. I was not afraid to be by myself anymore. I knew I was the boss of my fear, and I would make decisions according to what I felt was like not listening to fear and let it tell me what to do. I started to make the decisions for myself. What I did was recognize when fear was in the room. When fear talks to me, I say, that's fear. I hear it. Thank you for wanting to protect me. But I think I've got a different plan here. I think we're going to go ahead because I'm not about to die, because fear is a protector in our brains to keep us from dying, basically. Yep. But it doesn't know the difference between dying and being totally humiliated or making a mistake, like we were talking about even back in high school. You don't know. Your fear gives you the same sensations in your body, whether or not, no matter what situation you're in. As soon as you start to respond to something in a fearful way, your brain doesn't know that you're not about to die. You have to decide, okay, I need to grow here, and so I need to take a step forward despite the fact that I'm terrified right now. But I have to do this because I need to grow. And if I don't do this, I'm just going to shrink down to this little old lady who will never do anything courageous. She will just, never live. So
well, I'm glad that you decide to cipher out, because sometimes fear is good for us, but most of the time, like you said, it doesn't know the difference. So it wants to take fear. Your mind wants to take fear and say, let's get the hell out of here, and run. And like I said, not raise your hand in class like me, because I don't look like an idiot. So sometimes fear is good. You just got to be able to interpret the difference.
Exactly.
And use it for your benefit. And the benefit may be to run.
Yeah.
But other benefit may be to stay there. Like I said, even if you fail, you're going to learn from it.
Yeah.
So, all right, Bernice. Well, you've been a blessing here with me today. And the guy before me, Lou, you were a blessing as well, man. So I appreciate both of y'all coming on. Him a while ago and you now. And gave a lot of good nuggets for us to hang on to and move forward. So, and what they say, this stuff on the internet's going to be there for ever and ever. So you're thinking 100 years from now, someone's going to go, that sounds just like my life story. And you're going to help them. So,
Oh, that's amazing. Good
yeah.
thought.
Yep. So, all right, Bernice, thank you for being here. And so, give everybody else your social media, anything going on with your coaching, upcoming books you may be working on.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. I have a second book coming out now. I'm writing a series called Little Books of Courage. So the second one is Brave Enough to Let Go, and it will be coming out right away. The first one was Brave Enough to Be Myself, and watch for the series. But the thing I really want to ask people to consider going to is what an AI tool that I have been developing called the Tiny Brave Steps Generator.
Okay.
And people can go to tinybravesteps.com. And when you opt into that generator, it's a chat GPT, but it's designed specifically to help you figure out what the problem is and what steps to take to get you moving again. So it actually talks with you through that, helps you to understand your feelings, your background of where things might be coming, just like we've talked about
Hmm.
today. And then it'll give you 3 little steps, one a 90-minute step and 2 or 5-minute steps that you can take to get yourself unstuck. So I would say go do that, because my passion is to see people get unstuck, to start to live their life, not to let fear or any block stand in their way and keep them from doing everything they're meant to do.
Good deal. Um, all right. Yep. So I'll put that stuff down in the show notes, make it a little easier for people to find as well.
Perfect.
And you may have given your little message, but we'll plug here. We know people hurting and struggling today. And if you can leave us with a positive message, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, my favorite quote, and my husband and I both always go back to this again, and it was when we were in that knight in shining armor era, well, we still are, but there's a quote by Andrew Redmoon that means so much to me in my life. Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something is more important than the fear. And I think that that's always what we need to do. We need to feel the fear and acknowledge the fear, but then take a breath and just stop and think, what really is going on here? And what am I afraid of? And am I the boss, or is fear my boss? So go out there, use that every time fear comes up. And you'll be amazed how you will begin to take steps forward that you never thought you could.
Amen. Bernice, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And everyone else, whew, I learned a lot from you. I'm good. And again, I really enjoyed bringing some memories back up for me to help out too. So, but yeah, if you got a good thing going on in I like the way you're thinking, and you're definitely
Mm,
gonna help out a lot of can you say women, but men learn so you can help your woman or
yes.
other women. So,
Yes.
but you're doing great, and I'm glad you were able to find the true you.
Yes.
Maybe a little later in life you wanted to, but
Yep.
at least you did, and I'm glad that we've got to experience the new you.
Oh, well, thank you.
All right, everybody else, hey, I'm Dr. James Purdue, the professor of perseverance. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.